Good afternoon, students. Welcome back. I understand yesterday many of you would have missed the program because the colleges were not functioning and our training centers were also not functioning. So whoever has missed the program yesterday, I would request all of you to go back to YouTube and try to connect through the link and see the program yesterday, because we cannot miss out on the program because we have a very tight schedule to follow. We have to complete the course within a stipulated 25 hours. So I carried out my program yesterday. We discussed two of the very important subjects. We did a bit of a recap on inventory management, which was done last week, and yesterday we discussed two very important topics. One was purchase management, and we also did a beginning on network design. And knowing that a lot of you would have missed the program yesterday, I would do a bit of an extended recap today. Okay, I don't mind, because we are already on course and we will be able to complete the entire course as per the scheduled period of 25 hours. So it doesn't matter. So what we did yesterday was, to start with, we discussed purchase management, and within purchase management we discussed three subtopics. One was how to do the purchase management, what are the various areas of purchase management. We discussed a very important sector in purchase management, which is negotiation, and we also discussed what is called sourcing. So in purchase management we discussed why purchase is done, why this is so important in supply chain management. To tell you very briefly, if you remember, in the very first session we said that logistics cost accounts almost 10 to 12% of the total cost that a company incurs. Okay, so out of every 100 rupees, a company is spending almost 10 to 15 rupees only on logistics cost. So it is very essential for logistics professionals, supply chain professionals, to understand purchase management, how purchase is to be done. Any purchase or procurement which relates to the logistics services, whether it is warehousing, transportation, material handling, packaging, etc., etc. We discussed what are the principles of purchasing, we discussed what are the process of purchasing, we discussed what is the importance of ethical purchasing, how to do a purchasing, how to evaluate a supplier, how to do negotiations. We also discussed the various documentations involved in purchase management, very important. Documents differ from company to company, documents differ from transaction to transaction. We also discussed what are the various steps sequence wise, how a particular company which is a buyer, if he has to procure or purchase either goods or services, he has to follow certain process steps. To start with, requesting for an RFI, which is a request for information, followed by RFQ, request for quotation, and then followed by proposal. We also discussed the function of the procurement department. Where does the actual purchase or the procurement process starts? The procurement process starts, you have to understand, the purchase management team or the purchase team or the procurement team in a company probably does not have any purchase requirement for themselves. So they are working as a central coordinator for the various departments, the production, the marketing, the finance, etc., who has requirements for various. Somebody needs a raw material, somebody needs components, somebody needs as something like stationery, somebody would like to purchase. There are so many requirements of purchase, either for the finished goods or transportation services, or not necessarily goods, services as well, logistic services as well. So it all starts with a requisition. After the requisition, a team is formed. If you remember, or when you go back to the link, you will see there is a process flow which has been represented by a diagram, a need diagram, which will tell you the processes in detail, how a team is formed, how a particular supplier is located, identified, how the suppliers is evaluated, how then the request for information, quotation, all that happens, how assessment is done, how is he brought on board, how the actual transaction take place, post transaction, how is performance assessed, then in case of damages or whatever it is, how is the supplier, how does the claim process happens, and then renewal in case the supplier is found to be satisfactory, or if he is found to satisfy the company's requirement, then the company decides to engage the supplier for a long term basis. When it comes to negotiation, which is extremely important, and I very categorically, when you see the video yesterday, I did specify that negotiation generally is misunderstood to be a negotiation or a discussion only on pricing and not at all. And negotiation, upfront it looks very simple. We are negotiating day in and day out on a personal front also. When we go to the market, we negotiate. When we appear for an interview, we negotiate. So we are negotiating, as when we are selling a product, we are negotiating. When we are supplying a product, we are negotiating. So there are two parties who are negotiating. One is a buyer and one is a seller. So when it comes to commercial negotiations, you have to understand that a huge volume of transactions are involved. So there are different types of contracts. Just coming back to purchasing, we discussed the different types of contracts as well. So negotiation, one has to plan for negotiation. The buyer has certain kind of planning to be done. The supplier who's selling the product has to do a certain kind of preparation. Both of them have to prepare a certain kind of checklist, and then they should both engage themselves for a negotiation. And during negotiation, what are the qualities required for a negotiation? Body language, communication, speaking to each other, having a positive frame of mind, all these qualities are involved. So sometimes we do ignore the other qualities that are required in logistics, and we are going to start today's session actually with a small video which has nothing to do with logistics and supply chain management. It is all about developing our communication. And why I am showing this video? Because communication is something which is extremely critical and important to whatever we do in our life. Right now I am presenting, I am giving a lecture, I am trying to explain you what is purchase management. So I am also trying to communicate to you, to communicate to all the students who are attending this session all over Andhra Pradesh. So I need to know how to communicate. I need to have a certain kind of body language, my tone, my pitch, the way I speak, the way I stand. So in commercial negotiations also, communication plays a very extremely important part. And at the end, while discussing negotiation, we had discussed it is extremely important that the companies get into a win-win situation. And we said that negotiation is a skill. There are certain people who are born with this skill. They have a natural talent. They know how to communicate. They have a speaking power. They have a communication power. Not everything they do. So somebody who is not aware of it, he can always acquire or learn. So somebody has an advantage, but that advantage does not matter. So negotiation as a skill can always be learned. And we are not going to, this particular course in supply chain management does not allow us to discuss negotiation in detail. We cannot get extended because we have a large course to cover. And I did say at every point of time, whatever subjects we are discussing in this 25 hours of our supply chain course, all of them can be learned in an advanced way. There is an extended subjects that can be learned. And as I said, once this particular course is over, we are going to register students for the advanced and the extended courses. Now coming back to the last and the most critical important point on negotiation is a win-win situation. It's not a war, it's not a game, it's not a T20 game that each of the parties are trying to win. No, negotiation is not that. Yes, there are two parties. Yes, there is a buyer and there is a seller. Now the objective of both of them is to satisfy the need of his own company. He has an objective, he has to satisfy. One has to understand the other party has also come to the negotiation table with the same objective, with the same goal. By trying to dodge each other or trying to win over each other will make the entire procurement process a failure. Nobody is going to win. So there can be a win-lose situation where the buyer is winning and the seller is losing, whereas on the flip side there can be a lose-win situation where the seller is winning and the buyer is winning. So either party but such a situation is not desirable. In a negotiation, the ideal situation is a win-win situation. At the end of the negotiation, both the parties should feel happy and satisfied, and there are techniques of doing that. Right now, we are only saying that win-win situation is the desirable situation, but how to do that is not included in this particular course. We can discuss that later. The last component in purchase management was sourcing. Now, the sourcing is actually, what is sourcing? The word sourcing comes from the word source. What is the meaning of source? The meaning of source is origin. So, a company is purchasing something, is buying something. Where is he buying from? Where is that product or service is coming from? Where is it originating from? Who is the supplier? Who is the vendor? To select that right vendor is the key to the entire success of the procurement process. If we go wrong in selection of a vendor or a supplier, then the entire procurement process will be a failure. And procurement is such an important part of supply chain management. It is too risky. It is too risky to make this a failure, because it is going to cost the company a lot of money. The company has to buy the right quantity. It has to buy that quantity at the right price. It has to ensure that whatever he has bought is delivered at the right time. He should ensure that this lasts for the certain period of time. He wants to ensure that the vendor is onboarded for a particular period of time. All that is required, and for that he requires the right kind of vendor. So, sourcing has to be correct. That means the evaluation, sourcing is basically evaluation of a supplier. To identify, there are so many suppliers for any product or service. Take a logistics service. Take transportation as a logistics service. Transportation is one service which is probably placed at the topmost level as far as services availed by the buyers, road transportation in India, because there are so many manufacturing companies who require transportation. There are so many service companies providing services who also require transportation. Now, can you imagine how many transport companies we have? There are many of them. Now, to select the best is an art. There is a process, there is a technical process to identify and select. And we also discuss one particular model in sourcing, and when you see the video, you will see we had taken example of 3 suppliers, say A, B and C. These are the 3 suppliers. I have to evaluate, I have to determine which of these 3 suppliers is the best as far my company is concerned. Which of these 3 suppliers should be onboarded? Now, how do I do it? Not on face value, right? So, there's an evaluation system. I will simply explain the evaluation system. We are not going to discuss the model again. We discussed the model yesterday. There are several such models. This is one of the most interesting models. So, we have taken 3 parameters. One was quality, one is price, and one was delivery commitment or delivery reliability. Now, the challenge is none of these 3 companies have the best quality or the best price. So, somebody who has a price of, say, suppose take for any product, suppose he has a price of rupees 100 per unit, but his defects, the product defects are 10%. That means out of every 100 items, 10 items are found defective. He has or he quotes a price of rupees 100 per unit, whatever product it may be. He is a supplier, and his delivery reliability, say suppose, is 90%. Now, for simplicity's sake, yesterday we discussed about 3 suppliers. since we are running short of time, we will discuss only 2 suppliers. Now, this particular supplier, he has a defect record of 15%. So, out of every 100 product that he produces, 15 are found to be defective. So, his quality is worse than A. So, B's quality is worse than A. He quotes a price of rupees 85 per unit, and his delivery commitment is 95%. Just take these 2 situations. Ideally, there will be many suppliers. Now, here is a situation which throws a challenge to the procurement authorities. Which of these suppliers has to be brought on board? If he selects this company because his price is best, you can save a lot of money, but his products are defective. His products are far better, but he is charging a little higher price. So, based on performance, everybody is given a rank weightage. If you remember, in forecasting we discussed the moving average, weighted moving average. So, we had given certain weightages. So, here also the suppliers are given certain weightages. So, based on the performance and weightage, all these companies are evaluated, and they finally give a number, an index, and based on that number, performance number, they are selected. So, in order to know exactly what is that formula, you will have to go back and see the video yesterday. We cannot discuss. What we are trying to do, we are trying to tell you is that there is no simple method of selecting a vendor. If you have to select a vendor professionally through a well designed process, then you have to follow such models. These models is going to help you, and there are, as I said, we will discuss as far our present course is concerned. We will discuss only this model. The other models can be discussed when we do our advanced course on supply chain management. So, this takes us to the video. Now, all of you should see the video very carefully. Why we are seeing a video on communication in our course in logistics and supply chain management? Because, as I said, procurement negotiation plays an important, very important part. Communicating with your customer is very important. Communicating with your seller is very important. So, communication as such is extremely important in the entire gamut of logistics and supply, the entire sector of logistics and supply chain management. There are a lot of extended programs and training programs on communication development. Yes, those are required. But for a starter, one has to understand what are those very, very key 10 things that you need to improve. If you follow this video, and when I upload the video, when you see this video continuously for a period of time, you will be able to improve your communication. So, let us see the video.
My name is Mark Walsh from Integration Training. These are my top 10 communication tips. So communication is massively important. In most jobs today, we're actually paid to communicate one way or another, and all these tips apply to emails, phone, and face-to-face conversations and meetings. So it's really the essence of what we do at work. And just in life, we're social animals, so communication is massively important for our health, our happiness, and our well-being. So I work a lot with communication in stress, leadership, team development, coaching, conflict resolution all over the world. And here are a few general rules of thumb. None of them are hard and fast, but these are the things that I've found will help communication as a general rule. So number one, listen first. So listening is massively important to communication. And if you remember just one, I'd remember this one. There's a video we have on what is empathy, if you'd like to look at it some more. It's really that intention to connect in the present moment. So really being present to the person you're with and listening to them. Number 2, breathe. So when a lot of people communicate, particularly if it's something stressful, some difficult situation, perhaps a speech or an appraisal at work, then people often get tense and they forget to breathe, so they don't come across as well as they might. So take a deep belly breath. Nice and slow and relaxed before you say what you need to say. Number 3, say I. So by saying I, you what we call own the communication. You say, I think this, I feel this. So it's really coming from you, and that's clear, rather than saying one or it, or not being clear in that way. So as a general rule, using I statements is useful for communication. Number 4, avoid judgment, blame, and denial of responsibility. So this is something I've got from Marshall Rosenberg of Nonviolent Communication. If you blame or judge people, then they don't like it. We all do it, it's very human, and it gets in the way of effective communication. Equally, denial of responsibility. People turn up for a meeting late and they'll say, sorry I was late, there was traffic, it's not my fault. Rather than, okay, I was late and the reason was, well, I didn't really leave enough time or I didn't check the traffic. So really owning your communication, having responsibility can help. Number 5, separate facts from opinions. The basis of a good conversation is often the facts. We often start with the facts. Let's say you're giving an appraisal, you can say, John, you've been more than 15 minutes late for the last 3 days. And that's quite different from jumping to an opinion or an evaluation and saying, well, you're lazy or you're sloppy. So really it connects, as you can see, to judgment and blame, but starting with some clear observations that the other person can connect with as well. Number 6, be aware of emotions. So emotions are a key part of being human. They're part of how we communicate. Often that's what we're communicating, is our feelings, our emotions, and emotional intelligence is really important in the workplace. 7, be aware of needs and values. So underpinning our emotions are our needs. So for example, I might feel happy because my need for consideration was met. Or I might feel sad or angry because my need for respect or dignity wasn't met. The beautiful thing about needs is that we all have them. They're completely universal. If you can connect with someone on that level, you can really see how they're similar to you. It can really help with the connection. Values is similarly another way of talking about it. So I highly recommend connecting to needs and values in any kind of difficult communication. Number 8, ask for what you want. So by asking for what you want, you're more likely to get it. Sounds like common sense, and a lot of people don't do it. Asking specifically and in the positive. So would you open a window now? Or rather than, I'm hot in here, yeah? Or instead of, I wish you'd love me more, would you be willing to give me a hug? So the specific thing that would meet your needs. Number 9, body language. So the body is really integral to communication. We communicate through our bodies as much as our words. If I say something without moving my face or expressions or body, it's much less engaging than when my body's really involved in the communication. We work a lot with this area at integration training, something called embodied leadership. There are videos of that, and what I'd say for now is just being aware of the body is what's important, not so much learning some tricks or gestures, but just paying some attention to your body while you're communicating. Number 10, last but not least, is taking account of the individual and cultural differences. So we're all different. Some people are extrovert, some introvert, some are more thinking, some more feeling orientated. So you might talk to those people quite differently. Similarly with
So I think that was interesting enough, and as I said that it has nothing to do directly with logistics. It's not a part of our logistics and supply chain management course, but it's extremely important because whatever we do, why we are learning this subject, We want to be, some of us want to be logistics, and I am very happy that I am getting connected. A lot of students are getting connected to me. They want to learn more about this subject. They are asking me questions, and it's very difficult to answer each of them, but I am making a note of it, and will definitely find out a platform where we can answer them. So I can see there is a desire, there is a willingness of our youths to take logistics and supply chain as their future career. And when you do that, be very sure it is not only about transportation, inventory management, material handling, integration, etc., etc. It also a success or failure also will depend largely on communication. And if you see that video again and again, all those 10 tips, and it is not going to make your communication better overnight. You have to practice it. While looking at it, I was just making a note of all the 10 points. I am not sure whether you have done it. Listen, relax, use I, avoid judgment, don't be judgmental, separate facts from figures, okay, be very specific, emotions, needs, try to understand the needs and the values, ask very specific questions, your body language while you are speaking to somebody, how you react, how your body movement, how you are looking at, is there an eye to eye contact, and then definitely cultural differences of when we are negotiating. Mind you, we are not always negotiating. We are from Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, or whatever it is, and it is not necessary that tomorrow we are going to sit on a negotiation table where we are going to interact only with a Tamilian or a Telugu or whatever it may be. So we would be doing it with other people from other parts of India, or maybe from other parts of this world. It may be a Chinese or a Japanese or somebody from US or from Australia, and everybody has their own culture, the way they speak, the way they wish, the way they shake hands, the way they look at you. It's different. One has to learn, because logistics and supply chain the subject cannot be restricted within a particular region or state or a country. It's a vast subject. The requirements are there. Tomorrow you may find yourself being stationed either in northeast or north or west or south or some other countries. So it's extremely important that if you are responsible for any kind of procurement and any kind of negotiation, you have to understand communication skills would play a very vital role. That's the only reason that I played the video. Let's go back to what we were discussing yesterday, and that is facility network design. If you remember, let's go to the slide. What is a network? What is a facility? If you remember, at the very beginning we discussed, when we were discussing logistics systems, what did we discuss? Of course, I have explained yesterday the first part of this particular chapter of network design has already been discussed yesterday. Why I am doing it again? Because as I said at the very beginning, that I understand yesterday many of you would have missed out the video or the session because of certain problems. The sessions could not be seen by many of the students. So facilities, they play various role. And what is a facility? And the various facilities form the network of facilities. What does facilities do? It can be a plant, a facility can be a warehouse, it can be an assembly section, it can be a packaging section, it can be an R&D section, it can be a logistics facility, it can be a distribution center, it can be whatever. So there are facilities. Companies, they establish facilities for the operations of their own company, and they play various roles, and depending upon their roles, company has to decide how to design this network, how to design this network of facilities. So we started with saying that the three most important parameters, or the three most important functions that determine or that help us to do the network design is the role of a facility, the capacity of a facility, the location of a facility, and number 4, market and supplier. These are the 4 areas, or these are the 4 factors which helps or which determine the network design of a company. What should that role that facility would play? Would it play the role of a production plant? Would it play the role of a warehouse? Is it going to play the role of an assembly section? Is it going to play the role of a packaging section? Is it going to play the role of a distribution center? Is it going to play the role of a logistics terminal, or is it going to be an R&D? And there can be several other roles depending upon the company and the industry. What would be the capacity? If it's a plant, what would be the production capacity? If it's a warehouse, what would be the throughput capacity? What could be the stocking capacity? What could be the maximum inventory that particular warehouse would be able to store? Location, where would be located? Very, very strategic. Is it going to be near to the consumer? Am I going to have my facility close to the customer? Or is it going to be close to my supplier? Or is it going to be strategically located in such a way that I am going to enjoy the benefit of being close both to the customer market? When I say market, I mean customer or consumer and the supplier. Very, very important. Few companies prefer to stay close to the customer because the response time becomes very smaller. The customer is very satisfied because the delivery response feedback is much faster. But there are companies, in order to reduce costs, they prefer to stay near the supplier, and they use a very fast, a very effective distribution system to reach the customers who are probably spread all over the country or spread all over the world. So it depends upon company to company. Now, after this, what we discussed was certain factors that influence where to set up my facility, a particular facility. Factors. And what are these factors? What are these factors that influence the decision as to whether a facility should be located in location A or location B or location C? Whether that facility should be set up within the state, whether it should be set up near the port, whether it should be set somewhere else, whether it should be set up outside the country to some other state within the same country, so different. So there are certain factors that influence such decisions of locations, of establishment of a facility. Let us go back to our slide and see these factors once again. Though we discussed this yesterday, for the benefit of those who missed out, I would like to discuss, because network design is an extremely important chapter in supply chain management, logistics and supply chain management. Let's see the slides. So we are not going to again discuss the network. We are going to discuss the factors. So what are these factors? So these are the factors. Technology, whether that particular place, if my facility require lot of technology application, then I should establish my facility at a place where technology is available. Macroeconomic factors, whether the tariffs and tax incentives are available. Political, whether that particular location has a stable government, the government is not changing every now and then, because if it does, then the policies change very soon, which directly or indirectly affect the companies who operate in that particular region. Infrastructure, very important, particularly for manufacturing units, the ports, the road network, the railway network. So all these, whether the airports are available for air cargo, whether export import can be done through good network of port, and that's the reason India is trying to develop the coastal line by development of at least 14 to 15 ports, because they understand in order to improve the international and overseas business, in order to attract foreign companies to come and do business over here, in order to boost the export, port development is very important. So, this is a part of the infrastructure. Next, after infrastructure, we have positive externalities. We had discussed yesterday. If you remember, what is positive externalities? A company would prefer to set up its facility at a place where its competitor operates. It sounds very funny, because now just think of an automobile company, a company who is producing automobiles. Now, he would prefer to operate in a place where one of his competitors are operating, because automobile is a sector which requires large supplier base. The manufacturing of automobiles, vehicles, cars, commercial or personal vehicles, they require different and several kinds of components which are supplied by different suppliers, machines, engine parts, upholsteries, tires, etc., are different. Now, yesterday we discussed, suppose this is the region where a particular automobile company already operates. Now, he has developed a large supplier base over here already. Now, there is another company Y who's planning to operate in this country, but if the bigger circle is the country and this square is the country and this particular region is a part of the country, then Y would actually come and operate in this particular region. Somebody would say, the logic is not clear, because you already have your competitor, but he enjoys the already established supplier base. He doesn't have to develop the supplier base. These suppliers who were so far only supplying to this company, they will also supply to this company. So, he has a ready-made supplier base. That is called positive externalities among the companies. Though they are competitors, they enjoy the positive externalities that they have created for each other. Let us go back to the slide. Logistics and facility costs, very important, because why? Logistics costs is quite high for any manufacturing company, for any company as a whole, 10%, 12%. So, a company would prefer to operate in a country or at a location where the inventory costs are low, the transportation costs are low, the initial cost of setting a facility is low, lands are available, transportation costs are done at a lower price, the warehousing costs are low. So, all this forms the logistics and facility cost. Companies would definitely not operate at a place where logistics and logistics costs are high. Then come socioeconomic. The other factors are socioeconomic, customer response, exchange rate, demand risk, tariffs, tax incentive, freight and fuel costs. Few of them have been repeated, I am sorry. Now, by socioeconomic we mean, in a country would like to develop all the regions. A country never looks at a country which wants to develop, wants to become a developed country, wants to develop all the regions that comprises the country. Now, think of India. We have regions which are economically developed today. You think of the Western India, you think of Maharashtra, you think of Tamil Nadu, you think of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Gujarat, etc., Bengal. But there are northeastern states, there are states in the northern part of the country which are still not as developed. There are not many industries. So, the employment is suffering. So, the local people are going outside the region to get employment. So, if the company decides to set up a petroleum plant, it would definitely consider the socio-economic factor. That means, it would actually decide to set up that plant in a place which will help that place to grow economically, and it is going to create a lot of employment. So, of course, exchange rate, we all know what exchange rate is all about. A country which does not have a very fluctuating exchange rate, so that the money transaction become very stable. Tariffs, incentive, freight and fuel cost is very important, because logistics, the operations run primarily on fuel cost, whether it's road transportation, whether it is rail transportation, whether it is air transportation, fuel cost determine the cost of transportation, the overall transportation, and transportation cost is very high in logistics. So, definitely companies would prefer a place, a country where the transportation or the overall the fuel costs are low. Now, we come to the next part. This is very, very important. Now, the design of a network, a framework for global site location. If I have decided to operate out of a particular country, now you see in our country we have many companies, many foreign companies who have started operating in our country. Somebody is operating in Ahmedabad, somebody in Kolkata, somebody in Hyderabad, somebody in Vijayawada, somebody in Chennai, somebody in Ahmedabad, etc., etc., etc. On the other side, at the very first place, they did not look at either Delhi or Pune or Chennai or Hyderabad or etc. They looked at India as a whole. So, they probably, a particular company who is probably based out of USA, when he wants to operate out of Asia, what he would like to do? He would not like to see an individual city within a country. He would like to consider options, whether it would be India or China or Sri Lanka or Singapore or Japan or Korea, etc., etc. He has to select one of the countries within that particular region. So, a network design actually follow certain phases of planning. Phases. There are 4 phases of planning: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4. Now, what all are planned in this different phases are explained in this particular diagram, which is there in your monitor. We are not going to discuss this in detail. The first phase obviously is the strategic level discussion, where the company discuss the competitive strategy, they discuss about where the finance is going to come from, it discuss about the capital requirements, the growth strategy, etc. In the second phase, the company discusses the competitive environment. So, the first stage is supply chain strategy, the second phase is regional facility configuration. They select a particular region. Within that region, in phase 3, then they find out or then they select some desirable sites. And at the last stage, in phase 4, among all the desirable sites, they actually decide which particular site should be the one where they should establish their facility. So, in phase 2, as I said, things like size, growth, local specifications, political environment, etc. are decided. In phase number 3, production methods, skills, available infrastructure are decided. And at the last stage, material cost, labor cost, transportation costs, inventory costs, coordination, all these are discussed and decided. So, only after a company has gone through these 4 phases that they actually decide a particular location. Now, think of any particular company, for instance. You may think of Microsoft, you may think of any other company, you can think of Volkswagen, you can think of any other Hyundai, for instance. So, name any company who has set up their plant or a distribution center. You can think of Amazon, who has set up distribution centers in certain parts of our country. Now, what all they did, they actually, not in this exactly the way this particular structure has been made, but overall this particular structure or this particular sequence in terms of the 4 phases are the ones which are discussed. So, the planning happens at phase 1, then phase 2. So, phase 1 strategy, bigger goals, phase 2 region, selection of the region, phase 3 within that region, desirable sites, and phase 4 the final site. So, once this is done, then only a particular facility is established. So, it is not easy. We can see several facilities that companies are setting up all over the world, and they go through a very methodical, a very structured planning process, and this is how the planning process happens. There are different models again, because decision making is done based on certain models. When you apply these models, those models gives you the solution. The solutions are not done only at the discussion table. Models are applied. We have several models on network design, and as always, all the models cannot be discussed in this short 25-hour course. We will discuss one or two models which are simple enough, and how this model helps a company to decide the location for its facility, and we do that once we come back from the break. So, we meet again after 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
మా కన్న తల్లిచే మంగళారతులు కడుపులో బంగారు కనుచూపులో గలగలా గోదారి కదలిపోతుంటేను బిరబిరా కృష్ణమ్మ పరుగులిడుతుంటే బంగారు పంటలే పండుతాయి మురిపా అమరావతి గుహల అపురూప శిల్పాలు చేతెను గోదారి చేతెను మా కన్న తల్లికే మంగళారతులు, కడుపులో బంగారు కనుచూపులు. మల్లె పూదండ గలగలా గోదారి కదలిపోతుంటేను, బిరబిరా కృష్ణమ్మ పరుగులిడుతుంటే, బంగారు పంటలే పండుతాయి. అమరావతి గుహల అపురూప శిల్పాలు త్యాగ చేతెను గోదారి చేతెను గుతల్లి.
ప్రభవించే సూర్యునిలా, ప్రశాంత ప్రకృతిలా, మీ హృదయ వేదికపై ఉద్భవిస్తున్న సంకల్పంగా, నవ్యాంధ్రప్రదేశ్ స్ఫూర్తిని నేను, స్వర్ణాంధ్రప్రదేశ్ ఆత్మని నేను, అన్నమయ్య పదకవిత ఆధ్యాత్మికతను నేను, కూచిపూడి నర్తనలో సిద్ధించిన అభినయం నేను, కలంకారీ కళా వైభవాన్ని నేను, కొండపల్లి బొమ్మ కులుకు వన్నె చిన్నను నేను, స్వర్ణాంధ్రప్రదేశ్ దీప్తిని నేను, చెరగని చారిత్రక యశో వైభవాన్ని నేను, ఎదురులేని తెలుగు ఏలికల రాజధానిని నేను, నేను అమరావతిని, నవ్యాంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాజధానిని, నేను సస్యశ్యామలని, అన్నపూర్ణని, ఆధ్యాత్మికానంద అంబరాన్ని నేను, మీ ఆర్థిక ప్రగతికి సోపానాన్ని నేను, మీ సాంకేతిక కార్యశాలను నేను, మీ ఆత్మ గౌరవాన్ని నేను, కళ్ళ నిండా ఆశలు, గుండె నిండా విశ్వాసంతో అడుగు ముందుకేస్తున్న సాహసిని నేను, నేను అమరావతిని, నవ్యాంధ్రప్రదేశ్ రాజధానిని. ఈ స్వప్నం పండించడానికి మన ముఖ్యమంత్రి, మన ప్రధానమంత్రి మనతో నడుస్తున్నారని ఆనందిస్తున్నాను. నేను సాకారం కానున్న మీ అందరి కల, మీ అందరి త్యాగ ఫలం, మీ అందరి కృషితో నన్ను భూతల స్వర్గం చేయాలి, విశ్వవ్యాప్తం చేయాలి. నేను అమరావతి, మీ రాజధానిని, ప్రజా రాజధాని.
Hi students, I am Dr. Maqsood Ahmed, lecturer in microbiology, SK Government Degree College, Godur. Today we will be discussing a topic from the second unit of our syllabus, that is general characters of cyanobacteria. I think you people know something about cyanobacteria. So I think you people are aware that it was, or you might have been studied it in your lower classes in algal family, but I want to tell you that this organism doesn't belongs to algal family, and from its name itself you can determine that it is a bacteria. So today we will discuss about the cyanobacteria. We will come to know why it is a